Welcome back to the Postpartum Plan podcast. This podcast is designed to support and empower you through postpartum. Whether you're expecting, in the early postpartum days, or beyond, this space is for you. I'm your host, Madison Fugere, a dedicated postpartum doula and pediatric sleep consultant, striving to help parents feel confident and supported in their parenting journey. Each week, I'm sharing practical tips and expert advice to help you navigate all the postpartum things with confidence. Well, as much confidence as you can. Let's embark on this journey together, making your parenthood as serene and supportive as possible. Ciarra is a birth and postpartum doula, hypnobirthing educator, and pediatric sleep consultant. She's also the creator and co-host of Birth Baby podcast and recently launched a birth doula training called Birth Baby Academy. Ciarra is a wife and mother of 2 kids, and her passion is helping people find their power in whatever stage they are in life. I am so excited to have you here today. Thank you so much for joining me.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Now, your bio will play a little bit before this, so people will kind of have the gist of like who you are, but do you want to tell everybody a little bit more about like what you do and what services you offer to the community that you're in and, how you got into this work and all of that?
Sure, I'm kind of a woman of many hats. People keep asking, why do you keep adding things to what you're doing? I'm like, oh, because, I can't really sit still. So I am first and foremost a wife and a mother of 2 kids. So I have a 14-year-old daughter and a 6-year-old son. And my 6-year-old son is really, the birth of him is what brought me around to this work. And it became a passion and I just kind of ran with it. Within about a year of him being born, I started getting trained and certified in hypnobirthing and then a birth doula. And I quit my job 6 months after I started this stuff and I never looked back. So in the beginning, I never planned for it to be as big as it is. And it's just kind of happened organically and naturally over the years. It started with just me being a birth doula and a hypnobirthing educator. Then I added sleep consulting. And then I started adding other doulas to the agency and then asked one of them to partner with me because I was like, we work very similarly. So I'm currently a birth doula, childbirth educator, pediatric sleep consultant, podcast host. So my partner and I started a podcast. And then we also just launched a birth doula training program where we have our first cohort starting in September for in-person training in Austin, Texas. So we're really excited about that.
That's so exciting. Now, did it take you a while to decide to like do a true birth doula training? I think so many people are like trained so differently from different places and all that. And I think there's different views on stuff. So I'd love to know more about, like what kind of brought you to doing your own training and what kind of is making that training different from, others that people are looking into.
Yeah, this has been, so first let me just go back a little bit where the podcast thing was definitely something that when I first started being a doula, I was listening to a bunch of podcasts and one of them was the Birth Queens and I loved their podcast. And I was like, one day, because that's a midwife and a doula. It's like, one day I'm going to have my own podcast.
I love
and
that.
Then about 4 years in, we launched Birth Baby, the podcast. And my business partner, I always come up with ideas and she was always like, Ciarra. I'm like, do you not want to do it with me? She's like, I'll do it. And it's always kind of like, oh, here Ciarra goes again with all of her ideas.
Oh my
and then
gosh.
she helps me bring them to fruition. And so after a little while of doing the academy and the podcast, and we've had some doulas come in wanting to be mentored by us. And we've seen some kind of sticky, weird situations with mentors before where like, they're charging them out the wazoo. And we wanted to be able to authentically show up where we're not just giving our time away all the time, but we're still able to mentor and help create doulas that are able to be sustainable. And so that's what we're seeing a lot of is that there's not a lot of sustainability in this work. And we want to teach people how to make this work sustainable. I feel like there are a lot of gaps in birth doula training programs where they teach you how to love on people a lot, but they don't teach you a lot of what might come up and kind of how to navigate helping people how to figure that out. You don't have to know the answers to everything. You have to know how to ask questions.
Right.
And so we really want to do with communication styles and effective listening and how to do the business end of things. So we're going to have it be a really all-encompassing, comprehensive program where when people leave, they'll still have to complete their, well, there's also going to be an online version eventually that's self-paced. But when people leave our first weekend together, they're going to have to fill out and do a packet where they apply for certification. And then at the end of that, they'll get their certification once we look through it. But we want them to be able to hit the ground running with that, and that they're not going to feel like they have gaps where they have to take a bunch more trainings in order to
Right.
even feel like they know how to start. So
Right.
that's what we hope to be different.
I love that. I love that. I think there are so many trainings out in the world, whether you're a birth worker listening and, trying to either start your business or add more to it. Like you mentioned, adding things is always so fun. Or if for our listeners who are, postpartum or even birthing like soon or even not even near, maybe you're not even pregnant and you're just listening because you're preparing for the future. But I think there's so many classes when it comes to that, which is why I'm so excited that today we get to kind of like tackle all of like the postpartum classes that we think are out there and kind of give a little bit of perspective on like what's worth taking and what's not, because I think people are so quick to take and read books about birth, and that's great. But I think that the postpartum period gets kind of left behind when it comes to those classes. Often people are kind of like, well, I don't know what my baby's going to be like, or I don't know, these things. I'm just going to figure it out. Like my parents figured it out and my friend figured it out. And like, there is some validity to that, right? Like that's totally possible, but having courses and support and like kind of going into it prepared can also make a world of difference.
Personality plays in a lot here too. And you're right, like people listening could be from any walk, right? They're doing anything. But I've been kind of surprised at how many of our past clients are interested in becoming birth doulas or postpartum doulas. So that's been kind of cool to see that spark lit in other people, just like that's what brought me to this work.
Right.
Um, and it's a personality thing. We have some people come to us that want to take all the classes. We had somebody hire us not too long ago that before they even hired us as their doula, they had signed up for classes with like every company here in Austin,
Oh my
so
gosh.
many like duplicates. And I was like, okay, wait, there's such thing as too much information. You know,
Right.
still take one of each of those sections, but like it's going to be overload. And then there are people who crave that. And then there are other people who are like, no, that's overwhelming. I don't want to know
Right.
anything. I'm going to experience it myself and I don't want anybody else's opinion. Both of those are valid, but I think you won't even know what one you are until you know what's out there.
Exactly. I think that's so true. And I think some people, like you said, yeah, they definitely like over prepare, but then there's such thing as like too much information, which can then make it more stressful. So I think people are always trying to find that balance. And so I think that kind of like is a great kind of leeway into saying, there are so many classes out there, but like what's worth it, right? I know that your agency, like you mentioned when we were talking, has so many different types of courses and classes for people. Do you want to share like what some of the ones you have are, or like what some of them that you have seen out there in the world exist so people can kind of just like get a scope on what we're talking about?
Yeah. So I'll start with one of my favorite mentors. Her name is Allison Coleman, and she owns Austin Baby Guru. She has an Austin Baby Guru doula training program. So she does postpartum doula training. And I love her program. I send people to it all the time, recommend it all the time. But one of the things that she says, she makes us take certain classes when we're training to become a postpartum doula. I don't remember which one it is. I think it's in the newborn and postpartum care or the newborn class that she has. It says, she always tells people there's gonna be a lot of information coming in from everyone, but what you need to do is take what you want and leave out the rest and really figure out what resonates with you. Because just because it worked for somebody else doesn't mean it's going to work for you. And I think if you don't take any classes, you don't do any preparation, you're only going to be getting the feedback from other people and your gut, of course. But people want to comment, people want to give advice. And sometimes
Yes.
it's a mom or an aunt or a sister, and then they're offended if you don't take their advice. So if you
Right.
don't have any sort of base that you're going back to from your education, just like with some of the books we love, like I love Moms on Call, the 0 to 6 month book, but not every bit of it is good for every person. Take what you want, throw out the rest. It doesn't
Right.
matter. So what we did as an agency was I wanted to be a little bit of a one-stop shop. I do wear many hats, but I also love to refer out when we don't have that class or don't have somebody that teaches that class. So we do personally, of course, we have birth classes and those prep classes, but that's not what we're talking about today. We have newborn and postpartum care class, where it's a two-part class. And the first part is kind of a pre-recorded part one, where you listen to it in the week before you have your in-person portion, and you really get like a big dose of information.
Right.
And you and your partner can pause it and talk about it and write down questions. And then you come to the in-person part two, where we have some hands-on, where you're learning how to change a diaper, you're learning how to swaddle, how to baby wear. We have a bunch of different wraps that you can try. And you're sitting there talking with a postpartum doula. I don't teach it. One of our doulas, Jess, does. I just love her. And most, not everyone is everyone's cup of tea, but we joke that we're some people's shot of whiskey. And some, usually it's a really fun dynamic. And
Yeah.
we just kind of joke about things, and we don't take things too seriously. And you get to ask all of your questions to her. And, it does get serious when it needs to, but you kind of have to go in with a little levity into parenthood. And then, so that's really cool. I love that people get the hands-on support. Then we also have a family safety class, which is taught by a respiratory therapist. That's actually a really great friend of mine, and she works at a local hospital in the PICU, NICU, and pediatric ER. And so she teaches infant, pediatric, and adult CPR and Heimlich maneuver, because you never know if you're going to be needing to do it to your partner too.
Right.
And we go over and we have the dolls that by the way, if you're going to take a family safety class, please make sure any sort of infant CPR or whatever, make sure they have the dolls for you to practice on, because you can think about it all day and you can memorize it all day. But until you get that muscle memory of actually pressing down on that doll, it has a green light that lights up that shows like if you're doing it right, or a red light if you're not going fast enough or you're going too fast. So that's really cool. And she teaches also a lot about kind of some of the safety stuff that you might not think about. For example,
Yeah.
toilets having lids on them that clasp, trigger warning, but we had somebody we know someone that had a baby pass away because babies are top heavy, and he leaned over to get his little boat that he had put in the toilet. And so you have to, you don't even think about those things until it's too late. So
Right.
some of the things that we talk about in that class, we're not trying to instill fear, but we do want to help with preparedness. So that's one of our classes. We also have a newborn sleep class that's pre-recorded, and we talk about sleep shaping, not sleep training, because with a tiny little baby like that, we are not sleep training, but there are things that you can do to help set yourself up for a better time when the baby comes along. Breastfeeding or any feeding courses, even some of those courses, breastfeeding classes should also teach you about bottle feeding and like how to
Right.
do that. So, because, even if your plan is to breastfeed, you might decide not to, or you might decide to combo feed.
Right.
So we do have one of those as well. Um, some of the classes that I've seen around town that I really like that we don't have anybody that teaches them, there is a Gottman relationship class, which I really
Ooh,
think is so cool, because what a gap there is between
absolutely.
learning how to be a parent, but also learning to be a partner while being a parent in this new dynamic. And we touch on that in our newborn and postpartum care class, but there's so much deeper you can go
It's
when
such a
you're,
balance. It is
oh man.
such a balance. The episode that actually just went up is a sleep consultant friend who is a mom of four, and she talks about just balancing how you're more than just a mom after you have kids. And I think the big part of what we were talking about in that was about a relationship too. Like you have to balance your own personal life, and you have to balance having kids, and now you have to balance having a partner. So oh my gosh, that's like an amazing course. I've had a couple different episodes on just the relationship after babies have joined you, and absolutely that's amazing.
Yeah, so many of us lose our relationship with ourself and
Hmm.
our relationship with our partner
Right.
by simply trying to survive.
Exactly.
And a lot of times we aren't coming at things as a team. We're coming at it as an individual, when really you've got to team up with your partner to, make it through any of this. So that is a class that I've seen that I think is really cool. Another one is a sibling class. So like, how do you integrate baby, And there's a local, another doula agency here in Austin that has a sibling class that I just love, that they
Awesome.
talk about integrating baby into different age groups, because, different people are going to have different aged kids when they're
Right.
taking those classes. But that can be really hard, that dynamic, and preparing for postpartum, of managing all of those kids at different ages with their different needs.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I love that. And I think that there's so much option, right? Like even people listening might have heard of or taken classes that aren't like what we've done today, or they maybe be the, or they might be thinking, wow, oh my gosh, like I've never heard of any of these, or I only thought there was just, postpartum care, like newborn class, like that was it, right? And I think that there is so many options, and I think it's great for people to know that they exist because some people are going into, parenthood and feeling like, wow, I know about newborn care, but, I want to learn more about the safety aspects or, different things like that. So I think that that's so awesome and such a great opportunity to have so much knowledge.
Yeah, and one of the reasons that we made our newborn class a bit different, because usually it's just a newborn care class, is what a lot of people will take. And that's great. You need to know how to take care of a newborn. But we don't really like if it's just, okay, what is the chances? People always want to know how to take care of the baby. What are the chances that somebody's actually going to take a class about how to take care of themselves or how to take care of their partner after their baby's born?
Right.
Not. So we were like, we're comboing it. That's it. It was actually the girl who taught it. It was her idea. She's like, we can't talk with one about one without talking about the other
Totally.
because we need to talk about how, yes, we need to know how to change diapers, but hey, dad, you also, or other partner also, you need to help do these too, because mom can't be getting up or birthing person can't be getting up and doing all of these things alone because they
Hmm.
also need to take care of their body. It's not about
Right.
laziness. It's about actually protecting the pelvic floor and healing
Yeah.
and rejuvenating and their hormones balancing, like all of these things, how to help properly feed someone that's lactating. All of these things are so important. And so we comboed it and we add the postpartum care piece in there with like, what are some of the products that you would need afterward? And
Yeah.
depending on what type of recovery you're having, and are you going to be body feeding or not. And if you are, then you're going to need all of these different things too. Are you going
Right.
to be exclusively pumping? You better get a really good pump, not just one of those ones that sticks in the bra,
Yeah.
So I think talking about all of those things is just really imperative, and people aren't going to sign up to learn about
Right.
that. We also talk
Right.
about postpartum mood disorders in there
Yeah.
because parents need to know that it can also happen to both parents. So I think that another really important piece of any of these classes is that both people take it, not just the birthing person, but also their partner. And 50% of the battle is whether or not you have the support around you to be able to make whatever you're trying to do sustainable.
Right. I think that's so true. Now, I'm so interested, and I think that it would make people think about the class options they want to take even more. Are there specific things that people come out of all your different classes being like, oh my gosh, I didn't know that? Or like, wow, this nugget of knowledge is gonna like stick with me for a really long time. Can you think of like any specific parts, or even if you've taken the ones like, the safety ones and somebody else teaches it, or the postpartum one and you stood in and like you kind of mentioned earlier, the way that people phrase things might kind of stick with
Mhm.
you, or, you know, different parts that people might not know about that would be good to kind of like just like throw in a little bit of tips and tricks while we're
Is
here.
there?
Yeah.
And by the way, one that I forgot to mention, and I don't teach it, but I took it when I was pregnant with my daughter, right after I had my daughter. And you take it with your kiddo usually, there's an infant massage classes.
Oh,
And I
fun.
think those are so cool because it's not only bonding with your baby, but also learning how to make them more comfortable.
Right.
So I learned that little I love you belly trick with
Yep.
my daughter doing that. And it was a game changer for us because it helped. If you don't know what that is, you go YouTube. I love you belly massage, and it helps with gas so much.
Oh my gosh, so
So
much.
I think that rather than a piece of advice they're taking away from these classes, overall, what we see is leaving with confidence
Mm,
because we have so many different types of people in our classes. Right now, I just finished up a hypnobirthing series, so it's a birth class with 9 couples. And I have been teaching this class for years, for almost 5 years. And I got so many new questions that I've never been asked this series. And it's like, are there even new questions to ask me? That's so
right.
cool. I love that.
That's awesome.
And the thing is that everyone's coming with a different background, a
Right.
different knowledge base. Sometimes one person in the couple has a huge, they have so much experience already. And the other one's like, I am clueless. And so one coming out, the person that already had a lot of experience, they may be coming out with an understanding of their partner
Right.
better, of like, oh, wow, they're really nervous about this. And I didn't realize that, but I can see by the way they were asking these questions.
Right.
Or I'm going to need to give her or him space to learn this on their own so that I don't step on their toes or so that I'm
Right.
not like seeming like I'm the boss, you know?
Yes.
And then the other person may come away with more confidence going, I'm not just going to have to acquiesce to whatever this other person is saying because I feel like I now have the ability to do these things. Or, you know, for example, my husband and I, he is absolutely the emergency handler. Like, if he's home and something happens, I'm yelling his name because I'm not handling it. Like I
Fair
put my
enough. I don't blame
he's like,
you.
he's bleeding, or like, look at his knee, whatever. And I can't handle it. Like if he's not there, I can if I have to, but that is not my jam.
Yeah.
And I'm way better with the emotions. Um, but so in those situations, taking an infant CPR for me was really helpful because I was like, okay, if he's not home, I'm going to be okay. And a
Right.
lot of times it's the opposite way. A lot of times, typically, it does tend to be the dad who doesn't have the experience. By the way, I had a ton of experience. I just didn't have any confidence with any sort of emergencies.
Right.
And he did. He jokes that maybe blindly, maybe he shouldn't have so much confidence, but he does. And I think we learn so much about each other in our relationship and about ourselves. And it's really like this understanding that we come away with that I think is the most important piece, rather than just like the actual little things that you're learning. I think that the overall confidence is the biggest benefit.
I think that it's such a good point that you brought up because I didn't even think of it that way, but I've had many, many clients come and hire me for postpartum support, knowing and saying that either both of them don't have knowledge they want to learn, but more times than not, it's, oh, I have knowledge and my partner doesn't, or and I don't want to end up feeling like I have to parent both of them or dictate what I need. And I also don't want to tell said partner all these things and then make them feel like they have to do it a certain way. So, like, I think the point that you said of like giving them space to figure it out on their own is something that's been all over my like social media feed recently, I think. And it's so true. Like, I think people are so afraid, especially in that postpartum period, if you're having some, anxieties, especially, being able to just let somebody else try to figure it out, even if it's a different way and it takes longer or, it's a different outcome. As long as everybody's safe, like trying to let people do that can be really, really nerve-wracking. But if you've taken a class, you at least have that like peace of mind of like, okay, well, we both learned this and I know that at least they can do XYZ, right? And I think that that's something that I didn't even think about with classes. And that's totally true, being able to feel a little bit more reassured. And I think that probably helps put that person who has more of that experience and feels like they might end up having to delegate a little bit more at ease and probably can rest a little more.
Well, it's the playing field a little bit, right?
Yeah.
Um, you just saying what you said, I wanted to like throw my hands up in the air and be like, yes, because I just taught a series, every class 5 of my hypnobirthing series, it's a 5-class series. On class 5, I always talk about how whichever parent is the more type A parent is going to be the one that's correcting. It's just our nature. I say our
Yeah.
nature because I am one of them.
I am too.
And yeah, I am. And what happens is the type A parent in this situation, this example, I'm going to use mom and dad because that is all 9 of the couples that I dealt with this time. So that's what I was saying to them. Mom, you cannot constantly correct how he dads because your kid doesn't have 2 moms. Your kid has a mom and a dad. If it was 2 moms, I would still say they have 2 moms, but you're only one of them. And the other one is
Right.
just as important. So, if mom is constantly correcting how dad is doing things, you're going to end up being the default parent.
Yeah.
And that is a bummer. I will tell you, if you always, it's kind of like if you keep reloading the dishwasher after they already loaded it, they're going to stop loading it in the first place because they're like, you just do it anyway. I may as well
Right.
just leave it in the side of the sink. So you can't show them that you're reorganizing the dishwasher. You can do it when they're not looking. It's kind of like refolding the towels, right? But I talk to people about how mom or whoever type A parent is, it's me, so I'm saying mom, whoever type A parent is, don't correct unless it's a safety issue.
Right.
So if it's just that there's a blowout every time that the other person changes the diaper, then you just hand them back. Weird. another blowout diaper. Eventually, that other partner is going to come and be like, how are you changing the diaper? Because why is this happening every time I do it?
Right.
And then I tell the other parent, not type A parent, if that person, type A parent, agrees to only correct you if it's a safety issue and to still do so with kindness, then you need to promise and commit to coming with vulnerability and
Right.
asking how to do something when you don't know how. Because they're not likely to ask how if they feel like they're already be corrected all the time anyway. They're gonna be like,
Right.
shoot, I'm not asking, you know?
I
So I
think
think
that's
that's
so,
a big part of what we come away with in these classes is evening that playing field and then
yes.
having a base for if there is an issue at home later, they can be like, remember, the one that is right can be like, remember in class when she said XYZ when the instructor was talking about blah blah blah, and then you ping the memory again, and then the
Right.
other parents will be like, oh yeah, rather than you just being the one correcting.
Absolutely. And that's exactly what happens a lot with those clients that I talk to. And whether it be, parents evening the playing field, or sometimes I have people that hire me, just for the support. And then they're like, my mother-in-law or my parents are, having a really hard time. Like they're not really helping. They're being more of guests when they come over, that kind of stuff. And so a lot of the time I'll be like, well, I'm happy to come over while they're there, or throw me under the bus, right? Like, because then it's so
Always.
much easier to say, like, remember when Madison said, remember our postpartum doula told us that you shouldn't be holding the baby every single nap, that we should try to put them down so that they don't, they can try to nap on their own, right? Or, oh no, it's okay that they sleep in their crib even if we're taking a shower because I have the monitor, or, oh, we can't let them sleep in the swing. Whatever it is,
Yeah.
it's really nice to have somebody else to make the waves and not to cause waves within your own, whether it be your partner and you's relationship or your family relationships or friendships, whatever that may be. And so I think that, yeah, hiring support and having somebody like that, or taking, and I should say, and or taking classes and being able to reflect back on those memories. And like you said, ping, hey, do you remember when they said that? I think can be such a game changer. And I think that it really just depends on what people are looking for too. There are so many classes out there. And like you said at the beginning of this, I really do think it's really a personality thing. So if you have the opportunity to kind of, talk to people on an inquiry call of whoever's teaching the class, or, find some reviews online and kind of try to see what people's personalities are like, I think that that's so huge when people are looking to take a specific class.
I would really recommend if you are pregnant and still haven't, if you haven't scheduled any of these yet, I would recommend asking if you have a birth doula or you've already hired a postpartum doula, you don't have to wait until you have the baby to hit up your postpartum doula to ask questions.
Absolutely.
If you need resources, they're going to give them to you. And same with your birth doula, even though they're not postpartum, you can still ask and they still are going to have those connections and resources. So I
Right.
highly recommend getting recommendations first. Like the couple that hired us and had already scheduled a bunch of classes, they did cancel some of them, but some of them they couldn't get a refund on, so they were just going to take anyway. And it was a form of anxiety response to go and sign up for all of those.
Right.
But it made them feel safer and more secure that they were at least going to be prepared. But unfortunately, what we do is, some of them they signed up for weren't so great. And some of them would use their lactation benefit with their insurance, even though they didn't realize that, even though it said it was free, but it's really not. And so
Right.
there are so many things that you can be guided on by the people around you, whatever those birth workers or postpartum workers or whoever are. Reach out to them, see who they recommend, who have their other clients liked for classes. Ask good friends of yours or ask a local parent group, what classes are best? I'm choosing between these three. Do you guys have a recommendation? Like
Yeah.
from your own experience
Right.
rather than I just heard about it,
Yeah.
and do a little market research before you sign up for those classes.
Totally. Totally. I love that. Thank you so much for giving all the different input and insight today. Hopefully, people feel a little bit more prepared while they're looking for classes to take, and they know more of what their options are like, whether they are newly pregnant or postpartum. There's definitely supports for everybody. So, thank you again for joining me.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for tuning into the Postpartum Plan podcast. I hope that today's episode brought you support, relatability, and valuable insight. Remember, you're not alone on this journey. If you enjoyed the show, please subscribe and leave a review and share with any of your prenatal and postpartum friends and family. Your feedback helps us reach more parents seeking support. And if you're looking for additional resources, please feel free to connect via Instagram at Serene Moments Doula for constant information, tips, and tricks, or check out my website, www.serenemomentsdoula.com. See you next week.